Night falls over Kyiv, but sleep is a distant memory. The city is bathed in a cold, electric blue searchlight sweeping the sky, sirens slicing through the silence. On every screen, every phone, every trembling hand, the same headline blares. Putin's unstoppable weapons are on the move, news anchors stammer, their voices tight with fear and disbelief. Russian hypersonic missiles, the pride of the Kremlin, streak across the night like vengeful comets. The world holds its breath. In a cramped apartment, a mother clutches her child, whispering a prayer in Ukrainian. In a distant bunker, a young soldier's knuckles whiten around a radio, waiting for the order that could mean life or death. Across the globe, millions watch live feeds, their faces lit by the ghostly glow of screens, hearts pounding in unison. The Kremlin's message is clear. Resistance is futile. Surrender or be erased. But then something happens that no one, least of all the Russian generals, could have predicted. The first missile, unstoppable by every Western analyst, suddenly veers off course. A second, intercepted midair, erupts in a silent blossom of light. The night sky, once a canvas for Russian dominance, becomes a theater of chaos and confusion. Explosions bloom, but not where the Kremlin intended. Instead of devastation, there is defiance. Instead of surrender, there is survival. Social media explodes. Hashtags trend in seconds. Ukraine holds. Myth shattered. In Moscow, a general's jaw tightens as he watches his masterpiece unravel in real time. In Kyiv, hope flickers in the eyes of those who had braced for the end. The world, stunned, leans in closer. What force could possibly turn back the tide of Russian might? What secret weapon, what courage, what ingenuity could rewrite the rules of war in a single night? But as the smoke cleared, what the world saw next would shatter every myth about Russian power. Rewind the clock. For months, the world had been fed a steady diet of fear. Russian state media, with its thunderous orchestras and slick graphics, paraded the so-called invincible arsenal, hypersonic missiles that could outrun any defense, drones that hunted in swarms, tanks that rolled like steel storms across the steppe. Anchors in Moscow smirked as they declared, "No force on earth can stop us." The message was clear, and it echoed from the Kremlin's gilded halls to the smallest village in Ukraine. Resistance is not only futile, it is suicidal. Western analysts, their faces grave on every major network, echoed the warning. Ukraine is outgunned, outnumbered, outmatched, they intoned. The Russian war machine is simply too powerful. Maps flashed red on screens from London to Washington, arrows sweeping inexorably westward. The world braced for disaster, for a blitzkrieg that would flatten cities and erase hope. In Kyiv, the mood was electric with dread. Families packed go-bags and memorized evacuation routes. Children learned the difference between the wail of an air raid siren and the distant thud of artillery. Grandmothers whispered stories of past invasions, their voices trembling with the weight of memory. In the subways, strangers became neighbors, sharing bread and stories in the flickering half-light. Every night, the city held its breath, waiting for the sky to fall. But the stakes were bigger than one city, one country. Across Europe, leaders huddled in emergency meetings, their faces drawn and pale. If Ukraine fell, what would stop the tanks from rolling into Warsaw, Berlin, or beyond? What would become of the fragile dream of democracy, of a continent united not by fear, but by hope? The world's democracies watched, their own futures suddenly tied to the fate of a nation most had never truly understood. Social media became a digital frontline. Videos of missile convoys and bombed-out schools went viral. Hashtags like #StandWithUkraine and #StopTheWar trended, but so did darker ones. #Inevitable. #NoHope. In living rooms from Toronto to Tbilisi, people argued, wept, and prayed. Some sent money, others sent prayers, but all felt the chill of history repeating itself. And yet, beneath the surface, something else was stirring. In the face of overwhelming odds, Ukrainians refused to be cowed. Volunteers lined up to join the defense. Engineers worked through the night, improvising new ways to fight back. Artists painted murals of defiance on shattered walls. The world saw a people who, even as they prepared for the worst, refused to surrender their dignity. Everyone expected a massacre. But no one was ready for the twist that would rewrite history. Vladimir Putin sits at the head of a long, gleaming table, his face a mask of icy calculation. Around him, generals in crisp uniforms nod in silent agreement, their medals catching the light. For years, Putin has cultivated an image of unassailable power, a leader who bends history to his will, who resurrects the ghosts of empire and commands the world's attention with a single steely glare. His speeches are broadcast to millions, each word carefully chosen to project strength, certainty, and destiny. In Red Square, tanks rumble past in endless parades, their turrets gleaming under the watchful eyes of the Kremlin. Missiles, painted with the Russian tricolor, are rolled out for the cameras, their very presence a threat to anyone who might dare to challenge Moscow's might. State television cuts between shots of these superweapons and close-ups of Putin himself, the architect of a new Russian century. The message is relentless. Russia is back, and it is unstoppable. Propaganda saturates every corner of Russian life. Billboards declare the superiority of Russian arms. Schoolchildren are taught to revere the military, to see their president as a father figure, a protector against the chaos of the West. In the war rooms, generals scoff at the idea of Ukrainian resistance. They are weak, one sneers, his voice dripping with contempt. They will fold in days. Laughter ripples through the ranks. The arrogance is palpable, a living thing that infects every decision, every plan. Putin's obsession with legacy drives him. He dreams of restoring Russia's lost glory, of etching his name alongside the Tsars and Soviet titans. Every missile test, every parade, every televised address is a brick in the monument he builds to himself. He is convinced that history will remember him not as a tyrant, but as a savior man who made Russia feared and respected once more. But this confidence is not just for show. In private, Putin's inner circle is equally convinced of their own invincibility. They dismiss Western sanctions as toothless, Ukrainian resolve as laughable. Let them try, a general boasts, swirling vodka in his glass. Our weapons are the best in the world. No one can touch us. The room erupts in toasts and bravado, the air thick with the certainty of victory. Yet, for all the pageantry and propaganda, there are whispers in the corridors of power. Some advisors, their faces shadowed in the half-light, wonder if the world is changing faster than the Kremlin can control. But their doubts are drowned out by the roar of tanks and the thunder of missiles. The myth of Russian invincibility is too valuable, too deeply woven into the fabric of Putin's rule, to be questioned openly. But behind the bravado, cracks in the Kremlin's armor were already beginning to show. Ukraine's story is not one of easy victories or inherited power. It is a nation born from struggle, its borders redrawn by empires, its people tested by famine, occupation, and revolution. Yet through every trial, a stubborn hope has survived a belief that dignity is worth fighting for. No matter the odds, in the heart of Kiju, a former comedian rehearses lines for a television show, never imagining that one day he will stand before the world as president. Volodymyr Zelensky, once a symbol of laughter and satire, becomes the face of a nation's defiance. When the bombs begin to fall, he does not flee. He stands in the streets, phone in hand, broadcasting messages of courage to his people and the world. "I am here," he declares, his voice steady. "We are all here." In that moment, he is no longer just a leader. He is every Ukrainian who has ever refused to bow. But Zelensky is not alone. Across the country, ordinary people become extraordinary. Engineers who once built bridges now design anti-tank obstacles from scrap metal. Teachers transform classrooms into shelters, reading stories to children by candlelight as the city shakes. Farmers, whose hands are calloused from the soil, load their trucks with supplies for the front lines. In every village and city, neighbors form human chains to pass sandbags, food, and hope. Sacrifices everywhere. A grandmother bakes bread for soldiers, her kitchen window rattling with each distant explosion. A young couple, married just weeks before the invasion, volunteers to deliver medicine to the wounded. A university student hacks drones in his dorm room, turning toys into tools of resistance. Each act, small or large, is a thread in the tapestry of survival. Ingenuity becomes Ukraine's secret weapon. When Russian tanks roll in, they are met not just with bullets, but with barricades built from playground equipment and city buses. When the internet falters, coders create new networks, keeping families connected and the world informed. Art blossoms on ruined walls, murals of sunflowers, the national symbol. Rising defiantly from the rubble, unity is the heartbeat of the nation. In the darkest hours, Ukrainians sing their anthem in subway stations, their voices echoing through the tunnels. They share what little they have, refusing to let fear divide them. The world watches as a people underestimated and outgunned, refused to surrender their identity, and it was this unbreakable spirit that would soon stun the world. The night sky over Ukraine is a canvas of chaos. Sirens wail, echoing through empty streets and crowded shelters alike. Russian missiles, each one a promise of destruction, streak toward their targets with terrifying precision. The ground trembles. As tanks roll forward, their engines growling, their turrets swinging like the heads of mechanical beasts. Above, swarms of drones buzz and circle, searching for any sign of weakness, any gap in the defenses. In command centers across Ukraine, tension is a living thing. Officers bark orders, eyes darting between radar screens and live feeds. Every second counts. Air defense crews scramble, launching interceptors into the night, their faces lit by the green glow of monitors. The world watches in real-time news. Anchors narrate the unfolding assault, their voices tight with dread. Social media explodes, with frantic updates, videos of explosions, and desperate pleas for help. On the ground, the stakes are heartbreakingly real. In a small town outside Kharkiv, a family huddles in a basement, the walls shaking with each distant blast. A medic races through the rubble, her hands steady even as her heart pounds. Crouch in trenches, gripping their rifles, listening for the telltale whine of incoming fire. Every Ukrainian knows what is at risk, not just their homes, but their very right to exist. The Russian war machine advances with chilling confidence. Tanks crush barricades, their crews certain of victory. Drones relay live footage back to Moscow, where generals watch with smug satisfaction. The world's analysts, glued to their screens, begin to whisper that the end is near. The myth of Russian invincibility seems poised to become reality, but Ukraine refuses to break. Air defense teams work with relentless focus, tracking targets, calculating trajectories, launching countermeasures with split-second timing. Volunteers rush to reinforce battered positions, their resolve hardening with every explosion. In the chaos, moments of heroism shine through. A pilot risks everything to draw fire away from a convoy of refugees. A group of engineers repairs a critical radar station under relentless bombardment. The world holds its breath. In capitals from Washington to Warsaw, leaders watch the battle unfold. Their hopes and fears entwined with every missile intercepted, every tank destroyed. For a moment, it seems as if the tide cannot be turned, as if the weight of Russian firepower will finally crush Ukraine's resistance. But just as defeat seemed certain, Ukraine unleashed a secret weapon of its own. The world's eyes are glued to their screens, expecting to witness Ukraine's final stand. Instead, they see the impossible. In a dimly lit command center beneath, QE, a team of young engineers hunches over laptops, their faces illuminated by lines of code and flickering maps. They are not soldiers, but tonight, they are Ukraine's secret weapon. With a flurry of keystrokes, they launch a digital counteroffensive that will change the course of history. Suddenly, Russian hypersonic missiles once hailed as unstoppable begin to veer off course. One by one, their guidance systems falter, their trajectories twisting in the sky. On live television, a missile meant for a power plant spirals harmlessly into a field, its warhead detonating in a flash of light and dust. The world gasps. In Moscow, generals stare in disbelief as their pride and joy is rendered useless by invisible hands. But Ukraine is just getting started. Across the front lines, soldiers receive encrypted messages, prepare for drone hijack. Russian drones, once the terror of the battlefield, begin to behave erratically. Their cameras flicker, their engines sputter. Then, in a moment that will go viral within minutes, a swarm of Russian drones suddenly turns back, flying straight into the tanks they were meant to protect. Explosions ripple across the landscape, captured by a dozen cell phones and broadcast to millions. The myth of Russian technological supremacy is shattered in real time. In the chaos, Ukrainian fighters spring their own traps. Homemade anti-tank obstacles welded together from scrap metal and farm equipment funnel Russian armor into narrow kill zones. As the first tank rumbles forward, it triggers a chain of hidden explosives. The resulting fireball lights up the night, and the cheers of Ukrainian defenders echo through the darkness. Viral footage shows a single Ukrainian farmer towing away a disabled Russian tank with his tractor, the ultimate symbol of defiance and ingenuity. Western allies, once cautious, now move with urgency. Satellite feeds and intelligence are shared in real time. American and European engineers join their Ukrainian counterparts in digital war rooms, jamming Russian communications, feeding false coordinates, and turning the enemy's own systems against them. The collaboration is seamless, a symphony of resistance that spans continents. Social media erupts. Hashtags like hashtag David beats Goliath and hashtag Ukraine unstoppable trend worldwide. Memes of Russian superweapons exploding in flames flood every platform. In living rooms from São Paulo to Seoul, families cheer as they watch the footage. Ukraine, the underdog, is not just surviving, but winning. In Moscow, the mood shifts from arrogance to panic. Generals bark orders demanding explanations. How is this possible? One shouts, slamming his fist on the table. But there are no answers. The Kremlin's carefully crafted image of invincibility is crumbling, and the world is watching every second of its unraveling. On the ground, Ukrainian soldiers fight with renewed vigor. Each intercepted missile, each hijacked drone, is a victory not just for the military, but for every citizen who refused to give up. In a battered village, a grandmother weeps tears of joy as she watches the sky clear of enemy drones. In a hospital, wounded soldiers smile through their pain, knowing that their sacrifice is not in vain. President Zelensky addresses the nation, his voice steady and proud. We have shown the world that courage and ingenuity can defeat even the most powerful weapons. We are not just defending our land, we are defending the future of freedom itself. His words are shared and translated in dozens of languages, inspiring millions far beyond Ukraine's borders. The ripple effect is immediate. In capitals across Europe, leaders reconsider their strategies. In authoritarian regimes, whispers of doubt begin to spread. If Ukraine can stand up to Russia, what else is possible? The old rules no longer apply, but the most powerful change is in the hearts of ordinary people. For the first time, hope feels real. The myth of Russian invincibility is broken, replaced by a new story, one of resilience, unity, and the unbreakable will of a people who refuse to be conquered. But the shockwaves of Ukraine's victory were only just beginning to ripple across the globe. The world wakes to a new reality. News feeds are flooded with images of Russian superweapons in flames, their twisted wreckage scattered across Ukrainian fields. Hashtags like hashtag Ukraine unstoppable and hashtag Putin exposed rocket to the top of global trends. TikTok is ablaze with clips of Ukrainian engineers high-fiving in underground bunkers, of farmers towing away tanks, of soldiers grinning as intercepted drones crash harmlessly to earth. Memes spread like wildfire, Putin's face superimposed on a sinking ship. Russian generals photoshopped as chess pieces toppled by a Ukrainian pawn. The internet for a moment feels united in awe and laughter. In Kyiv, crowds gather in the streets, waving blue and yellow flags, singing the national anthem with voices hoarse from both fear and relief. Children paint sunflowers on sidewalks, their parents wiping away tears as they watch the footage replayed again and again. Across Europe, city halls light up in Ukrainian colors. In New York, Paris, and Tokyo, spontaneous rallies break out strangers, embracing, chanting, Slava Ukraini. The world's heart beats in time with Ukraine's as world leaders rush to offer praise. President of the United States calls Ukraine's resistance a beacon of hope for all who cherish freedom. The German chancellor tweets, "Today the world saw the power of unity and courage." Leaders who once hesitated now scramble to align themselves with Ukraine's triumph. Aid packages are announced, sanctions tightened, alliances reaffirmed. The message is clear. Ukraine has not just survived, it is inspired. Inside Russia, the shock is seismic. Videos emerge of Russian soldiers, hands raised, surrendering to Ukrainian units. Some weep openly. Others simply look relieved to be alive. In Moscow, Kremlin censors work overtime, yanking news reports, blocking social media, trying desperately to contain the narrative. But the truth is out, and it spreads faster than any missile. Whispers of doubt ripple through the ranks. For the first time, the myth of Russian invincibility is not just questioned, it is ridiculed. Ukrainian heroes become global icons overnight. The young engineer who hacked the drones is profiled on international news. The grandmother who baked bread for soldiers is interviewed by the BBC. President Zelensky's speech is quoted in classrooms and parliaments around the world. Their faces, their stories, become symbols of what is possible when ordinary people refuse to back down. Social media is not just a mirror, it is a megaphone. Artists create digital murals, musicians compose anthems, activists organize fundraisers that raise millions in hours. The ripple effect is unstoppable in countries far from the front lines. People look at Ukraine and see themselves their own struggles, their own hopes, their own longing for dignity and justice. And as the world cheered, one question echoed from Washington to Beijing: what would Russia do next? The world's attention turns to Kyiv, where President Zelensky stands before a sea of cameras, his face marked by exhaustion and resolve. The city behind him is battered but unbowed, its skyline a testament to both suffering and survival. He speaks not just to his people, but to every corner of the globe, his words echoing through living rooms, classrooms, and parliaments. We proved that courage, not cruelty, shapes history, he declares. His voice steady and clear. We showed that the strength of a nation is not measured by the size of its arsenal, but by the unity of its people. When the world doubted us, we believed in each other. When the missiles fell, we stood together. And when the darkness threatened to swallow us, we became the light. His words ripple outward, stirring something deep in those who listen. In Warsaw, a young woman wipes away tears, remembering her own family's stories of resistance. In Lagos, a student nods, inspired to speak out against injustice in his own community. In New York, a crowd erupts in applause, their cheers echoing across continents. The message is universal. Freedom is not a gift, but a responsibility, one that must be claimed, defended, and shared. Zelensky's speech becomes a rallying cry. He honors the engineers who outsmarted missiles, the farmers who towed tanks, the children who painted hope on broken walls. He reminds the world that Ukraine's victory was not just military, it was moral. It was the triumph of dignity over domination, of ingenuity over intimidation, hope over fear. He calls on the world to remember that the fight for freedom is never truly over. Today we celebrate, he says, but tomorrow we must continue. Not just for Ukraine, but for every nation, every person who dreams of a life without fear. Our struggle is your struggle. Our victory is your hope. The camera pans across the crowd, faces young and old, scarred and smiling, united by something greater than themselves. The anthem rises, voices joining in a chorus that refuses to be silenced. Around the world, people stand a little taller, reminded that history is not written by tyrants, but by those who dare to resist them. The story of Ukraine becomes a mirror, reflecting the best of what humanity can be when it chooses courage over comfort, unity over division, and justice over oppression. It is a reminder that even in the darkest hour, The light of freedom can never be fully extinguished. But the fight for freedom is far from over. The next chapter is ours to write. Tonight, the world witnessed the impossible. Ukraine wiped out the myth of Russian invincibility, not with overwhelming force, but with courage, ingenuity, and the unbreakable will of a people who refused to be erased. The so-called unstoppable weapons were stopped. The world's most feared war machine was outsmarted by unity, resilience, and the belief that freedom is worth any sacrifice. This is more than a story of missiles and machines. It's a story of ordinary people rising to meet extraordinary challenges. It's a reminder that no tyrant, no matter how powerful, can silence the voice of a nation determined to write its own destiny. Ukraine's victory is a beacon for all who have ever felt small, outnumbered, or underestimated. It proves that the future belongs not to those who rule by fear, but to those who stand together in hope. If this story moved you, if you believe in the power of courage over cruelty, now is the time to act. Subscribe to this channel for more stories that challenge the powerful and uplift the brave. Share this video with your friends, your family, your community. Let the world know that the myth of invincibility has been shattered and that the fight for freedom is everyone's fight. Support Ukraine however you can. Donate, speak out, stay informed. Every voice matters. Every action counts. Together, we can amplify the message that dignity, justice, and unity are stronger than any weapon. History is watching. Will you stand on the side of courage? The next chapter is being written right now, and you are a part of it. Join us. Stand with Ukraine. Stand with freedom. And never forget, when ordinary people refuse to back down, the world can change.